So here's what Washington said about this. He said he had rules for the soldiers. And Washington ordered that there be no blasphemy, gambling, or abuse of alcohol among the troops. He reasoned that they would alienate God's superintending care over their just cause if they engaged in such behavior. Now, he issued these commands on July 4th, 1775, and they're all included in his published writings. And he requires and expects of all officers and soldiers not engaged in actual duty a punctual attendance on divine service to implore the blessing of heaven upon the means used for our safety and defense. And you know what's happening in our Army today? The chaplains aren't allowed to pray, and they're not allowed to go to churches and wear their uniforms. And Franklin Graham was uninvited to pray at a military breakfast. This is not what George Washington expected of his troops, and it is not the way we're going to win any war in this day and time, because God has not changed over the years. Washington understood that unless you have, and why has America's Army always been the one that everybody wanted to see come in and liberate them? Because they knew that there were moral people in the Army. And that morality was based on religion. And if we get away from that now, our troops are going to be no better than anybody else's. And yet, there is this purge in the military now to get rid of all religion, because we don't want to offend the Muslims, because they might be upset if we had Christian prayers anywhere. They are bigots, just the way Sam Adams said. And we are not bigots. If some imam wants to go up and pray to Allah, have at it. I don't care. I can sit there and listen. And so can all of you. But they cannot stand to hear any prayers to our God. And they are bigots. And we have to not be afraid to say that. So George Washington, in his farewell address, his farewell address to the nation after his second term said, "It is with caution that we should indulge the supposition that morality can be maintained without religion." I mean, all of these guys said these things over and over and over again. And then even when we read these books about the founders that have come out recently, we don't hear these religious things, and yet this was the very foundation of all of their lives. As a matter of fact, when we talk about this whole separation of church and state myth, which is another thing that drives me crazy, because our founders did believe in the separation of church and state. The Church of England was the king. That's the kind of separation of church and state we're talking about. But our founders believed that God was over the church and God was over the government. It's just that they were two different spheres of things to do. The church did some things, the state did other things, but God was over both of them. So there is a separation of church and state in function, but as far as who is over them, God is over both. And unless God is over the country, we might as well not bother. We can just all go home and, build our food cellars and, get ready to hide. George Washington said, there were some Indians that came to see George Washington, because he was a pretty famous guy. There was a battle during the French and Indian Wars where the Indians were trying to kill Washington, and they kept shooting at him, and they were aiming at him. And every other officer in that battle in Pittsburgh at Monongahela River, every other officer in that battle was killed, and Washington was not killed. And the Indian chief asked to see him after the war, and he said, "You are going to be a great leader of your nation. You cannot be killed." And so Washington had a great rapport with the Indians. And you know what he told them when they came and asked him, "How can we make ourselves better?" This is what he said. Once again, these are all quotes. We've got the citations in our book. George Washington said to the Indians, "You will do well to wish to learn our arts and ways of life, and above all, the religion of Jesus Christ. These will make you a greater and happier people than you are." Listen to this. "Congress will do everything they can to assist you in this wise intention." So George Washington told the Indians that Congress would assist them all to become Christians. And now we're saying that we have to have some kind of separation of church and state, and we can't have even a national. I mean, that judge who said that the National Day of Prayer was unconstitutional was an idiot. And if any of you meet her, you can tell her that I said that. I mean, that is the most ridiculous thing I ever heard about. This nation was founded on prayer. We've had presidents giving prayer proclamations for, 235 years, and now all of a sudden the National Day of Prayer is unconstitutional. I mean, that is just insane. We are just going nuts, and we've got to stop it. Here's what Washington said in a letter to a fellow Virginian, Thomas Nelson, the publisher guy, you know, but this was back in 1700, so he wasn't so famous yet. But George Washington wrote a letter to him, and he said this: "The hand of providence has been so conspicuous in all of this, that is, in raising up the nation, that he must be worse than an infidel that lacks faith, and more than wicked that has not gratitude enough to acknowledge his obligations to this God." So this was our first president. Now, at the same time, even James Madison, our right-winger, he understood that not everybody had to be Christian. That's why I say I'm unabashedly Christian. America will only be strong if we put ourselves back on Christian principles, but that means that everybody has freedom. And it is only because of the God of the Bible giving us freedom that atheists have freedom to not believe. And I don't know how they don't figure that out. You know, if the Muslims ever take over this country, who do you think the first ones are going to be in the firing squads? You know, we're not going to kill them, but the Muslims will. I don't get it. You know, there's something that doesn't quite connect in those brains, I think. But anyway, what James Madison said in his memorial and remonstrance in 1785, yeah, I know my husband's saying, don't you wish she'd say what she means? He says that all the time. But here's what James Madison, our right-winger, said. And I think that all of us right-wingers would say amen to this. Here's what he said: "While we assert for ourselves the freedom to embrace, to profess, and to observe the religion which we believe to be of divine origin, we cannot deny an equal freedom to those whose minds have not yielded to the evidence which has convinced us. If this freedom be abused, it is an offense against God, not against man." So Madison was saying, if we have a state church and if we require everybody to go there, then we are offending God, because God gave us all freedom, and including the freedom to choose. So we had wonderful founders who based this all on religion, and unless we rebuild based on religion, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to get there. I don't know how we're going to get the court to decide. I think one way might be, you listen up here, Mr. Prendergast. One way might be, do you know that there are only two functions that the Supreme Court actually has jurisdiction over in the Constitution? You all study this, right? Only the disputes between the states and their pastors. Every other jurisdiction, like whether or not we can pray, whether or not we can have abortion, whether or not we can do anything, none of those areas have been given to the Supreme Court, except by Congress. Congress has said that the Supreme Court can have all these issues that they get to decide. And the minute that Congress says, no, you can't decide anything except the two constitutional issues anymore, well, those justices are going to have a whole lot of time on their hands, and we're going to have a whole lot better country. But you know why Congress likes the Supreme Court to make all those decisions? Because then they're not going to offend any of their voters, and they can just say, oh, it wasn't my fault, the court did that. You know, like the congressman can say, oh, well, you know, I wouldn't have been for gay marriage, but, you know, it was that court in Massachusetts that did that. And then they don't have to take responsibility for anything. But our Constitution says that every department, executive, congressional, courts, every department has the obligation to enforce the Constitution. And we send representatives to Washington to represent the people. And the way that the other side, who doesn't have the people, right, the way they get their things in place is to go through the courts. The ACLU is like the mafia. The ACLU and its ilk, they go around and they sue everybody. They sue the schools, they sue the city councils. Did you know that almost every bad thing that's ever happened in this country has happened because the ACLU has sued somebody? And we're involved in a lot of these cases now with the prayer at city councils. And you know that the city councils are so afraid of the ACLU that as soon as they come knocking and say anything, and I read those letters and they don't even have a law right, but as soon as they come around, it's like, ooh, the ACLU's here, we better stop praying. And there's no reason to do that. No reason at all. But even the judges say that. I was in a negotiation in South Florida with this retired judge, who was actually older than I was, which was pretty amazing. And